booties for black girl nerds.
My last year of high school and before college, around the same time that her character did. And so that culture shock of being able of having to adjust to a new environment and a new culture and a new group of people and was something that I could draw from. And dance and art was the way that I was able to survive that and, you know, sort of remember who I was and, you know, why my voice was important. So I wanted to gift that character, you know, give those that experience to that particular character. But in terms of the story in itself and why it wasn't just about her, it's inspired by a relationship of an aunt and uncle of mine who were married in Tanzania in the mid 90s. And my uncle got a student visa to come to the US, you know, soon after. And to this day have been stuck in an endless cycle of visa applications and rejections. And so having seen how it's changed their lives over the years, you know, I was just inspired by the what if story. What if the visa was no longer an issue and auntie and cousin were able to come? Where would they begin at that point?
Mhm. It's just so heartbreaking because so many people are so ignorant to what the immigration process is like. They're like, oh, why did you just come here? You know, why didn't you just do this? Why didn't you just get some papers and come over here? And we don't get an opportunity to see many films who even speak to the intricacies of that process and just how legitimately long it takes while it affecting the other aspects of people's lives, particularly Sylvia's. Jayme, you were so lovely, and we got to see so many just aspects of your talent, your acting ability, your dancing ability. We got to see all of these things. When you first read for this role, what was most intriguing, and what did you like most about the character?
Um, I was most intrigued by that relationship with her and her father. That, you know, stuck out to me. I could relate to it in certain aspects, right? Of longing for this relationship with this man who was once present and is no longer not, right? And for her, he wasn't she when he was present, she wasn't even in an age of consciousness, you know, she was a baby. Um, and I was really drawn into that, into what is that like to be reunited with this man who you have mixed feelings about, who you understand why he went to America because he's trying to provide a better life, but you kind of resent him for that. You wish that he was here with you and your mom because he hasn't been there all of, you know, your childhood and your adolescence. Um, and so that struck me. I was like, for that reason alone, I was intrigued in the script. Um, and then I, I getting to be a part of it and figuring out the nuances, right? Figuring out all the nuances of what that is like to be dealing with everything that she's dealing with, of being in a new environment, of going to a new school in a country where English isn't her first language, of trying to understand where she fits in this new family dynamic. Like all of that was just such a gift as an actor to try and float through and figure out, right? Because that's meaty, that's the work. And it's subtle. Ekwa writes it in such a way that she allows it for it to be subtle, for it to live and breathe as opposed to like jamming it in somebody's face. So that was a gift to get straight out of school, to work on such nuances.
It was that was particularly heartbreaking. Just the looks on your face. It was just, you know, subtle touches that only children are capable of, like just a splash of hurt. But then you have to move on to the next day where you want to challenge, where a teenager wants to challenge what their parents are doing or thinking, but they can't because they want to be respectful of their place in the family. And the way you navigated all of that was really beautiful, Jayme. You did a wonderful job. And I felt like your character, I have a daughter who is probably about the age your character is in the film. And I thought about all the times where she wanted to be challenging or, you know, disagreed with any decision making. And I just love how you captured that. Ekwa, with the storytelling, I love the use of three different points of view because they always say there's three sides to the truth, you know. But in this case, we got to see a very difficult situation from very different perspectives. I talked to Ntare the other day, and it was refreshing to see that his point of view as the patriarch in the family who loves his family, but has a whole nother scenario that's happening in America while he tries to reconnect the family, but then just to see Sylvia and her mother come over to the country and try to assimilate into this new American culture. Why did you choose that vehicle for storytelling to give us 3 points of view?
I think I was just really fascinated by the idea that, they're all experiencing this one sort of monumental, victorious event. And from the outside, anyone would assume that it's wonderful. Like everything's great. You finally, you've crossed the finish line, success, victory, yay, celebration. All of you must be so happy, right?
Right.
And they are, but they're all having such specific experiences of this one victorious event based off of the baggage that they've come with. The baggage that they've brought to this table is very unique to each individual at the table. And so therefore they're experiencing the event in their own very unique way. So they're all sitting at the table and being very polite and nodding and like, yes, yes, we're very happy. But, behind them is each of them have a different story. And I didn't want to dismiss anybody's story or experience as being like, well, that's not that important, because all of them are just so unique to me. And I wanted, it was a little bit of greed and a little bit of indecision of not wanting to just focus on one, and just really loving the idea that all of them are unique individuals, and I'm wanting to showcase that.
Yeah.
Jayme, when you participate in these types of projects, independent films, they, in a way, they kind of give you a different type of growth as an actor. It allows you to do more things creatively than, say, a mainstream project. How has participating in this film changed you, challenged you as an actress?
Um, I mean, it's a gift, right? To say that this was the first project I got to be a part of. Uh, it's unreal. I didn't have film experience, right? I came from training, theatrical training, and usually your first few years are trying to figure out how to take what you've learned in theater and translate it, right? And this was a cast and a crew that allowed me to figure it out. And just, I think now of how much of a blessing it was to have Ekwa, this Black woman, being my first film director. It sets the bar. It sets the bar for any project that I take afterwards. The tone that she set on set, with the grace and the intimacy and just the ability for me to be and figure it out without dealing with egos, like, that is a gift, man. And it sets the tone, so that any project that I take on afterwards, I know what to expect. It's a high bar. There's nothing I'm going to take below that kind of environment, that kind of spirit, that kind of work, that kind of material. So it's been a gift. I just sum up that summer working on this project as a true gift and blessing, moving forward.
It really, I mean, 5 years ago, this would have been a totally different conversation.
Yeah.
We are seeing more Black filmmakers, particularly Black women, able to use their voice and their power for storytelling in the last few years. And it's gorgeous, and it's timely and needed to see all of these different perspectives. But it's a shame that it had to come in a time when most of the world is locked down. As as a filmmaker, Ekwa, it's obviously, to some extent it's a curse, because we're all forced indoors. But at the same time, does it allow for more eyes to see your project? Since it's specifically, do you find it more challenging to get people to watch your film, or what has this been like for you after showing, as independent and winning awards, and now we're all indoors, we can't be with each other to discuss and unpack and do all these things? What has this period in time been like for you personally?
It's been a challenge for sure. It's been a challenge, and it's so different. I mean, it's my first feature, and it's my first feature debut experience, so I can't I don't have anything else to compare it to, other than, you know, shorter films that I've done. I don't know. I mean, we were lucky enough, you know, the first few months of the pandemic, you know, people hadn't quite figured out the online screening yet. So, and even for people who had distribution, I think all of the distributors were, you know, everybody was sort of like trying to figure out the new day that we're living in. And so, um, so it wasn't very clear as to like whether this was a good or bad thing. All right, how long are we going to be doing this? Maybe by August we'll be able to go back in theaters. You know, there was just a lot of this back and forth, and then I think start like midsummer is when people the film festival started figuring it out. I feel like we've been able to share a lot wider, especially with the film festival experience, where, you know, like with Sundance, for example, Sundance was incredible, but you had to have been there at Sundance to experience that, and not everyone can do that, and so, you know, that leaves out everybody else. But with the online experience, there's a lot more people who are able to log in and have the experience. We don't get to sit and, you know, for us as filmmakers, we're not able to sort of hear the audience reacting and sort of take them in and have the Q&A conversation in person afterwards, and, you know, get that sort of human connection that is so wonderful about the process. But I feel like we've been able to travel further by being digital, and we'll see what the effect is for that. You know, I think especially because, as you mentioned, like we've kind of gotten into a new era where all of a sudden space has been made for 5 more Black women as opposed to 1.
Right.
So therefore, you know, I mean, there were a lot of Black women at Sundance this year, and award-winning Black women at Sundance this year, which is incredible. And so for us to all be able to have our work travel a little bit farther this year, who knows what it would have been like had it been a regular year with all of our distractions and all of the things that we normally have to deal with. Getting people to come into a theater is a very different ask than sort of logging onto whatever platform that's available to you.
Speaking of that human experience and connection, how's your family reacted to this, to seeing themselves embodied, portrayed in this way? Were you afraid for them to see it, or what was it like
Yes.
on both sides?
I mean, my wider family hasn't seen it yet. I showed my mom, I showed my best friend, and I showed my brother. Both of my brothers have seen it, and a few of my cousins here in the US. My family in Africa, our film is being distributed on Netflix in Africa starting December 17th. So from December 17th, at least the ones who have Netflix will get to see it. But you know, for all of the ones who have seen it, I showed an aunt or two like the trailer, and I think it was just, you know, it was a lot to take in. It was a lot to take in, but it was just exciting for them to see oneself, you know, especially in this environment where we're not used to doing that. We're not used to hearing our language. We're not used to seeing stories that are actually relatable to us, that are not issue driven, war driven, problem driven, but just humanity driven. That's not something that happens very often. And to be able to recognize, you know, even if like recognizing music, you know, songs, particular songs, I've had that experience where people, you know, even not my family members, but other people were like, oh my God, yes, I know, you know, like I know that song. It's so exciting, you know, and I think for a lot of Americans, it's something that people take for granted. How, you know, the being able to see oneself put reflected to you in the media. You know, a lot of people here, especially white people, have grown up where that's just life. That's just normal, regular life is like
Absolutely.
you're everywhere. You're on billboards, you're in magazines, you're this, you're that. But for a lot of us, and not just Africans, but African Americans too, that's actually a very novel experience. And so it's very exciting to watch it, certainly as a creator. because that's the reason I made it.
That's- Jayme, I'm floored. I don't know how that got past me that this was your first film experience. What has this been like for you, for your family, to see you to begin living your dream?
They're hilarious. My mom in particular, everything excites them, as it should. I mean, yeah, my mom and my sister now have seen the film. My sister actually came out to Sundance to see it, and I was so nervous, man. Because they've seen me, do theater, but this was new. And like I'm sitting with her in the audience, and I'm watching her as she's sitting back as it starts, and throughout the film she starts leaning more and more forward, and I can hear when she's laughing, and I can hear when she's like hit by something. And my sister's very stoic, so you don't really get much emotion out of her. And like after it was done, she just turned to me and she said, "That was good." And I was like, "Yes."
Success.
Right. But it's been a whirlwind, man. They've always been so supportive, and they're just happy that all of this is starting to happen for me. So like anything that I'm experiencing, it's a success for them. They just take it on with so much pride and excitement. Very, very supportive.
You need a good stoic family member. For me, it's my brother who is not blood pressure is not raised by nothing.
No, it keeps me grounded and humbled in like this industry that's like crazy. My sister, my mom, they are just these women in my family, very stoic. They don't really show too much. And so they will keep you humble in a second, in a heartbeat. And I'm so grateful for that. They will never change.
At least now if you get too many, that was amazing. Like, oh God.
Yeah.
I need to work a little harder.
Yep. How amazing is it really?
Yeah. Amazing. I'm so excited. Exactly. It's amazing.
Exactly.
So what happens now, Ekwa? Are you in the process of working on the next? And so I would love to see what happens next to our little family that's probably not going to be the case, but have you ever considered doing a part 2? Because I want to know. I had a lot of questions like, ooh, what happened to the nurse?
I know, right?
What happened with everything? Have you ever considered maybe adapting into a series? Since it's going to be shown on Netflix, it could be a limited series, maybe on HBO.
Oh, she giving all the ideas.
I love a good limited show on HBO. I love good representation of seeing my people from the motherland. I love all that. Have you ever considered any of those things?
Not immediately. Not even like that wasn't the first thought that came to my mind, is like, we need to keep going, but it has certainly been suggested. And there's plenty more to explore. I have also had the suggestion to turn it into a book, which was kind of interesting to me, because usually you see it the other way around, like a book show or a series. But being able to express that way. But the thing with me is that I came to film due to the deficit that I found in my life growing up, the deficit of stories about our people. So I find it very difficult to stay on the one topic forever, because I'm like, we have way too much work to do. There's way too many books, way too many stories to be told out here to just, stick on this one thing. I feel like these characters like these may show up in some of my other work. And I had thought at one point early on, before we shot this, of sort of like the sequel, Sylvia at some point goes back to Africa and, is taking her dancing to the next level or whatever it is. But we'll see. I don't know. It hasn't been a wonderful year to write, just to have the brain space to write much. So I think that's one of the things as we thaw out into 2021 and start, figuring out the damage that's been done and figuring out our space, that might come. We'll see.
All right. Well, thank you, ladies, so much. I enjoyed this so much. It was really beautiful. I
Thank
loved everything about it, and it conjured up a lot of feelings for me, for close friends and family that I know who had similar experiences. So I enjoyed it so much. Thank you for your time this morning, and I hope a lot
Thank
of people
you.
watch it so we can have some kind of, at least some dialogue on Twitter or something.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Come find us on Twitter, please. Thank you so much,
Thank
Deandra.
you. Thank you.
Yes,
Have a
thank
wonderful
you.
day, ladies.
Yes.
You too.
Bye bye.
Better shake your booties for black girl nerves. Better shake your booties for black girl nerves.